But I look, it's an hour in and we haven't talked about it yet. We have to talk about left wing. So, and the reason I say we have to talk about it is we have an interesting decision to make. First of all, it's an area we may be looking to strengthen in the window. Martinelli is starting and Trossard's on the bench, and Mikel had comments about Trossard's not happy. Look, the way he celebrated his goal, make no mistake, this guy thinks he should be starting. That's what you want your players to think. I think we have got to lose the attitude that, like, you have to make sure you keep every player happy. You can't keep every player happy, but, and I'll read the Mikel quotes in a bit, but he's certainly responding in the right way. And that's what's most important, is that you respond in the right way. But Paul, Martinelli tracked back defensively well. He runs, he makes the effort, he does a lot of good things. When Cash came off and Nedeljkovic came on, I thought, okay, here we go. This is an 18-year-old who came over from Red Star Belgrade, who played 900 minutes for Red Star last season, and has about an hour under his belt in the Premier League or less, whatever it is. And I have to say, I was just very disappointed with Martinelli. Look, there's a great player in there, and I have no doubt he'll come back. But here's my take right now. He is not using his moments effectively enough to continue to start for us when the guy coming off the bench is just cleaner and more effective in the decisions he makes. Martinelli ran down blind alleys. He ran the ball out for a goal kick at one point. He had one really bad looking moment where he was isolated on Nedeljkovic, tried to take him to the byline, decided to cut back. The help defender came back. He turned around and just gave it right back to Rice. It just one of those moments where it didn't look like he knew what he wanted to do. And what I see with Martinelli right now is a player who doesn't know. Now, there was a great moment where Rice found him in behind. He cut in. He slid it across to Kai. It was just behind Kai enough that I don't think the finish Kai tried was on at all. And it comes out for nothing. It doesn't even wind up looking like a big chance. And Martinelli does the right thing there on instinct, right? Runs in, really good run, off the shoulder of the last defender, early ball, first time into Kai. But other than that, he's a player who I think you have to create more danger than that up against a teenager with no experience in the Premier League. And easy for me to say sitting here in this chair, but I just think you have to, Paul. And I'm curious how you see it, because Trossard came on and immediately he gets a ball across. Immediately, first time gets a ball across that creates a dangerous chance. His ball is the one that creates the Thomas Partey goal. He scores a goal himself. He's involved in the big chances we have late in the game. I think this is a moment for Martinelli probably to just maybe be the guy who comes off the bench, tries to change games from there.
Yes. The only thing is, if we had Leroy Sané or Doku or Grealish or something on the bench, Martinelli isn't starting right now. The thing is, we kind of need the Martinelli thing. Him and Trossard are not the same player. And so, we're probably going to change who starts the next game just because you couldn't not start Trossard after, he does that, contributes significantly, in fact scores one of two goals, and the fact that Trossard made such a big point when he came on in terms of his attitude with the celebration and stuff. There's a bit of trouble brewing there, and I think Arteta handles it really well. But there's something going on there. I thought it in the instant reaction, and having looked at it and having looked at the response, Trossard doesn't love being second string at the moment, especially given that he sees Martinelli's not in top form and that he's the guy who's been providing goals from that side. But I'm not going to go... we all know the Martinelli discussion at the moment. He's not giving us the end product. He's not at his best levels. If there was a Sané or somebody of that kind of level and ability and profile, he'd be playing right now. Martinelli be on the bench, licking his wounds, rethinking. Trossard's saying, hey, I could see the game from where I was on the bench and I knew what to do. But he almost made the case for why he's a super sub. That's great. Why don't we do this every game? You have a really good look about what you want to do when you come on at 70 minutes. You're really good at that, Leo. And you don't have the legs to run a defense for 90 minutes. And we've seen this many times with Leo. So I think the manager has a bit of a challenge at the moment. it's another case for needing another attacker in the mix, or Gabriel Jesus staying fit so he has a different option off the left wing. I don't think Trossard, it's not me saying, and to Clive's point in the chat, it's Brighton up next. So Leo's starting, but there's such a different profile that only Martinelli can do that kind of high and wide and aggressive and running in behind and threat, which we elected not to use for 20 minutes at the start of the second half. And so we need another attacker. But more than anything, we have a £100 million player at left 8 that we did not use for 20 minutes in the second half. And we need Mikel Merino. And I'm more convinced than ever that Mikel Merino has come to be the starting left 8, not a rotation option. People are like, well, do we really need him? And why is he coming? And is he just... No, he's going to start way more games than maybe people first thought here. He is there to make the left hand... This is why I talked about him as a hub. And it's maybe the wrong word, but he's the guy that there's no way for that 20 minutes we weren't going to be feeding Mikel Merino and he wasn't going to be slipping a ball or two or doing movements that gets Martinelli into the game. So I'm going to suspend judgment on Martinelli for a little while. I agree with the criticisms. I want to see Martinelli a few games into the Mikel Merino era at left 8 and see what happens in that side, because and this isn't new, right? I've critiqued Declan Rice as a left 8 before, even when he was playing well and doing good things. I think he plays well in that area. I don't think the left-hand side plays well with Declan Rice game in, game out. There are games that suit him, but there are games that don't. There is absolutely no way with Granit Xhaka in that team on Saturday, we don't feed the ball to him for 20 minutes of the most critical phase of game. It's not all about Martinelli. It's absolutely not all about Martinelli.
Yeah, you don't have to kill a player to say that maybe at the moment it's not happening for them, right? Yep. The thing is, and I said this in preseason, I want to make sure this is clear. We are trying to win the league and the Champions League, and the level is very high. And I think when the ball comes to Martinelli right now at this moment, I don't think the decision-making and execution is at the level currently. I'm not saying it won't get there. And I take your point. Look, at some point we got to be honest about saying things like he does the work defensively or gives us the running, like, is absolutely true. I'll stipulate to that. It's table stakes with him. And then we have to ask if that's good enough. He had no shots in this game. Trossard had 3 in the time he was on. I do think our biggest challenge is creating more threat from the possession we have. And in order to create more threat from the possession we have, we need our left side to be more effective in the moments where it comes into the game. And so when you're not beating your man off the dribble, when your delivery is not consistent, when you're getting no shots because you're not finding ways to get into the box, it doesn't mean you're a bad player. No, nobody is saying that, of course. But I do think it is a moment. And I just want to read you something, because I actually think there's a big hint in what Mikel said post-match about Martinelli starting. Okay? And I think this is really interesting. He was asked on the efficiency being the difference than last year. He said 100% last year. I think we generated more, obviously, because the context of the game when they scored first. Today, they did something a little bit different to what we expected, especially in the first phase of build-up, the way they behave. But that is what we have to do, so on and so forth, okay? And he was asked about whether Trossard should have started, and he goes, what we expected today, I decided to play Gabby. I think he's talking a little bit about the space he thought we'd have to run in behind. And that space wasn't maybe there. I think Villa were a little more content to lower the defensive line height. And so I think that there was an expectation there that Gabby would be and we, by the way, it's not just Mikel. What did we say on the pod last week? I really hope Gabby starts against Villa so we can challenge their high line. That high line wasn't there to challenge. And so maybe it's a little unfair on Gabby because he wound up playing a low block that was set in its defense going against 2 defenders instead of running into space. So Clive, I think he could have had a big game if what we expected happened. As Mikel said, they did something a little different than we expected, and maybe that changed the dynamic as well.
Yeah, I'm not worried about him starting this game. I'd have picked the exact team that we picked. In fact, I called Timber the week before. I thought Leon Bailey would be a threat. I think he's the best left back for Leon Bailey. I think he's even better than Tomiyasu. Because I think he's more sprinty. I think he can really travel with it. So, and I thought Martinelli would play. And until you guys' points are really thoughtful and constructive. But when it comes down to it, suddenly we have relationships on left-hand side. And why was that? Because Trossard knows how to build relationships with Declan Rice. He knows when to go. And the trick is that the ball's arriving to the player in possession, you got to go just as he's cocking his leg. You got to make your run then. You know, he understands the art of timing and positioning. And so the first goal, I mean, it's a thing of beauty, Trossard's goal. He's standing behind the fullback. I promise you, watch how many crosses went to the back post, Martinelli's at the back post. When have you seen him score a back post goal ever? I can't think of too many. How many goals you've seen him score by the penalty spot? The coaching message is easy, mate. Get yourself to the penalty spot when we're going down the right-hand side. Don't wait behind fullbacks, hiding behind them, and then going out to touchline to collect the ball to knock it back to our fullback. Get yourself to a penalty spot. What did Trossard do? He was behind his fullback. He gambled, went in front on the penalty spot, slot, goal. He did it in seconds. It's about getting yourself to those areas. Do you remember the goal that Martinelli scored at Luton? Got himself to a penalty spot, touch, goal. It's very simple for him. Create relationships, use your underlap, get yourself to a penalty spot when we're building up on the right-hand side, because you now become a centre forward. We debate on this podcast whether he's a centre forward or a winger. Right now, we just want him to just get on the ball and do some good stuff. But he has got the natural ability of a centre forward. So get yourself there. There's enough build-up on the right-hand side. It's really simple for me, really simple. The other thing he's got to do is learn to stop. You haven't got to race a million miles an hour to the touchline. Just stop. Clip it with your right foot. The ability to sprint and slow down is really, really key. And if you want an example of how to do it, look at the bloke on the other wing. He sprints, he stops. He shakes his shoulders, he unbalances you. He knocks it inside, gets it back, then goes. 1-2s. He varies his approach to attack his fullback. At the moment, Martinelli looks a bit one-dimensional. I'm going to outrun you. I'm the fastest thing in the world. I'm going to outrun you. But what if you can't? What if someone's got to run on you? What if someone knows that's what you're going to do and they drop off early and you lose the race? Do you lose your confidence? So really just get the ball, knock it, build play, build relationships. When we're building up on the right-hand side, get yourself on the penalty spot. You've got bullets in both feet and you can head it as well. But you can't do that behind fullbacks on the edge of the 6-yard box. And that's the truth. It's really simple to get him back. It really is. That's my opinion anyway. Sorry if that sounds a bit dramatic, but I know we've seen him score 15 goals in the season. If you can remember too many back posts, I think there's one he scored against Villa, maybe 2-3, or West Ham, where he back post volleyed it. But he was still within the line of the sticks. Get yourself between the sticks, mate, and it'll all come back to you. It will if you keep putting yourself in that position.
It's a team game, and part of why we're in the game to win it late is the teamwork for one another. I do think we tend to do this thing with Martinelli. Let's just be honest, where we come up with all the reasons why the left-hand side is hard. He had Xhaka and Zinchenko, and then Xhaka was taken out. And then he's got Rice, who's learning the left 8, and he doesn't have an overlapping fullback, and Timber comes in. And so it's hard. It is hard. But you know who has the same thing is Trossard. And he comes on and he makes that impact. And I watched this game back because I was so curious to see, all right, he arrives at the back post. He's a little lucky, right? It goes off Kai, and it rebounds to him, and he's there to strike it first time. But it wasn't just that. For the party chance, he gets him behind and he puts in a really clever first-time ball across the box. The decision-making is very clean. It's very instinctive, and it has to be because that's the level that we expect to be. So we'll just have to see. Look, I think what Trossard said, let's do a few quotes here. Trossard said about his own performance, I know the competition in the team and it pushes everyone to go on to the next level. And as I said before, I'm very happy to have an impact and help the team. And it's a great win for us. I think you can see on the pitch as well, I'm feeling great. I think I've shown that over the last months, and it helps the team as well. And it pushes everyone across the team. In every position, there's competition. It's what the club also needs. What Mikel said on him, well, first of all, when you don't get picked, there's a certain way to react. And Leo, he's upset, but he's upset to show on the pitch how good he is. And then on whether Trossard should have started, yeah, as always, and obviously we have two great left wingers on top of that risk that can play that position. It's always a challenge, but you know that you're going to get the quality for certain specific games. And then I mentioned, he goes on to say, what we expected today, I decided to play Gabby, and then they went a different route. So certainly some of this is tactical, and that makes sense. You have different players, horses for courses. Paul, just a final thought on this. I don't think we have a Martinelli problem. I don't think that there's any need to panic about this stuff. Form ebbs and flows. And one of the nice things about having a good squad is that when form is ebbing for one and flowing for the other, you can pick them, but they are very different types of players. Sometimes we see Leo have a stinker and you look and he's had a goal and an assist. He is much more that guy. Whereas Martinelli, I think, can do a lot of things right, but not get that last action right. And so those, on the one hand, in Martinelli, you have sort of the complete performance, but the last action isn't there. And in Trossard, you get the last action. So as a final thought on that positional battle, do you have some instincts on how that might proceed from here?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you took the two players and fused them into one, which I hear is still illegal, you'd have one hell of a player. Giving Martinelli what he's lacking at that moment, that chill in the box, because that goal Trossard scores, we've seen Martinelli do that in the past. Unfortunately, it's way too far in the past, but he must have been looking at that saying, why didn't I get that chance? I could have buried that. And to Clive's point, he probably has been getting that chance recently. He's just not thinking and being in the right spaces and feeling the game because he's trying too hard and following, it didn't sound like Trossard was following anybody's plan apart from the plan he could see from the bench. So he was a little freed up from maybe the positional discipline that might have been. He was on to prove a point, and he was making runs, and we weren't passing to him, by the way, till we scored our goal. But he was a little more free-spirited in maybe how he played it. Small sample size. How does it all get resolved? Well, slight scratch record here, but Mikel Merino is going to come in, and whether he's the answer and whether that was the problem, it's going to be different. You can't deny it'll be different. He's a very different player to Declan Rice, and so I'm like, let's see what happens. We bring in this chap. I suspect he'll start quite a bit, and we'll see. There will be new dynamics formed, new partnerships. I think I'm going to like them a lot more from a Martinelli standpoint, but like them, they're going to be different. And so, you've thrown all the pieces up in the air. Different things are about to happen. Let's see how it plays out. But Martinelli needs a few games to get his mojo back. We've said this before, and now he needs to do it.
Yeah, and let's keep this in perspective. I think this calendar year, Trossard has the same number of goals and assists as Saka. I think he's got more than Cole Palmer, non-penalty. This is a guy who's really, it's not like we're talking about a guy who's chipped in with one important goal and suddenly we're saying bench the other guy. Trossard's on a heater, and when you're on a heater, you kind of earn the right to play a bit.
He's always been like this, though. That's the one thing you'd say about Trossard. He's always got these kinds of goals. He just has it in his boots. Yes, Clive?
Well, I think, by the way,
Elliot, I'm going to have to cut to Clive here. He wants to say something.
Well, so to that point, I was just going to say, I think it's important to remember that Trossard played centrally a lot for Brighton. He may have more of those instincts, from playing centrally. He played centrally for us a bit. So there's a little bit more of that central space player in him. Yeah,
he's a good player, but I've always been minded at how he arrived at Arsenal. He arrived at Arsenal in dispute with his manager, remember?
Yep.
And we were thinking, we're bringing somebody in with a bad attitude. We haven't seen any sign of that bad attitude until maybe that goal on Saturday. He said speculating with no evidence at all. So, I don't think he's a little fly in the dressing room, right? And look what happened in the summer with Belgium. There's some problems there, wasn't there, in the Euro tournament? And it wasn't a great summer for him regarding selection and things like that. So, let's see how he goes. He deserves to play some football matches when the appropriate football match is in front of him. It's the same for all of them, right? I know Paul has got Merino in for beating the Tony Adams appearance record, but we haven't quite got it yet. That's good. That's all good. But it's so interesting to see how we manage. And by the way, by next Friday, lads, the European Champions League draw happens, and we paste all those names in, and then we have another chat about team selections. Trust me, it will all change. It will all change in about 5-6 days' time. So it can be funny.